Hello everyone, my name is Mehek. I hope you guys are doing fine and safe, and like always I also hope that you guys are reading. Finished a very interesting title, I would say, and a very different one. It's called We All Know How It Ends. It's by two authors, Lyons and Louise. That's how it looks. It's a hardcover. So both these author, one is a funeral director, like she plans funerals, and the other is a very interesting term. You can look at it later on as well. They're called end of life doulas or death midwives. Now I didn't know a thing like this existed. I'm not sure if we have one in India. We might, but the more I read about it, the more comforting it sounded, to have someone to look after you in your last days, and to support you or to provide that comfort. Coming to the book now, the book is basically, so these two people, the funeral director and the death midwife, they've come together and they've had obviously a lot of experiences with people who have been dead, who are dying, and people who are also living, the families of the people who are dead. So they have all these experiences, and what they've done is they have collated all those stories in this book. And there are also some handful lessons depending on which situation you are in your life. Now this book and the stories are basically distributed into various sections. So there's a section that talks about death, there's a section that talks about how you can become a death midwife. Then there is a section that talks about funerals, and then lastly we have a section about unsaid things, or how it is important to live a life without regrets. Now you must be wondering, why would I want to talk about, or why would I want to read a book which is on death? It can all be so sad, but I think the author says, and I personally believe that just as we accept living and birth as a natural thing, so is death. It's a legit truth, and the sooner we acknowledges that one day each one of us is going to die, the sooner we'll start treasuring the opposite person, and also for ourselves we'll start living a more meaningful and a fulfilling life. If I know, yes, I'm going to die one day, why don't I live a life without regrets? And why don't, if I know the opposite person is also going to die one day, I'm obviously going to treasure them a lot more. That's the reason the author says that it's important to acknowledge and talk about death and not make it sound like something which is bad, or which is something as a failure, or it is scary. In fact, the author says that just how we have sex education and all these education included in the curriculum, we should also talk about death. Why do we keep our children away from it? Some people feel that it can be traumatic, but not always. If you handle it in a very sensitive way, it can be a very affirming and an experience for the children where they open up and they become more sensitive. Also, when people say, I have seen, in movies and in general also around, people use things like, that, oh, your mom has gone for a long sleep and all. So the author says that please avoid these things, because it can, at the end of the day, it can turn out to be very confusing for the child. So avoid those things. In short, just avoid all those stigmas and negative word which is associated with death. Let's just all accept it as a natural phenomena in our life, just how we accept living and birth. Now in this chapter, the author has also discussed, like the term that I used earlier, the death midwife. They believe, a death midwife believes, just as the start of the life, those days are very important. Similarly, the last days of your life are also important. That's when also you're looking for comfort. So a death midwife, just like a birth midwife, she provides you with that comfort and support, and not just to the person who is dying, but also their family and friends, because they are the one who are grieving and would not know to take care of a lot many things. So a death midwife also provides support to them. So in this book, the author has listed how you can become one. More or less the examples and things are there from abroad, like especially the UK market, but I believe in India we do have a thing. I was just looking, so the author has listed points about how you can become a death midwife, and how you basically prepare yourself. Now the next chapter, which is on funeral, is again very interesting and one of my favorite chapter. The author says that in abroad, especially abroad, people today are planning their entire funeral. You have and that's the reason you have a funeral director who takes care of all the things. So people are actually deciding on the music that they want to use, the flowers and all. The crux being that your funeral can be a very peaceful and a happy experience. Now, why I say a happy experience, because again, the author has made a wonderful statement here that you can still mourn someone. Just hear me out. You can still mourn someone by celebrating their death over a hearty meal with your friends and family. So it doesn't have to be a really a really sad, like, yes, you're mourning someone who is dead, but you can also celebrate their life by talking about or by discussing their stories. Now, honestly, in India, we don't really have this concept of funeral director, or if we have, I'm not sure. We just have pundits who take care of the entire things, and our families follow these age-old traditions. Some of them honestly do not make sense to me, like things like after someone dies, you sleep on the floor, the girls are not allowed to go to the cremation center, you stop cooking food, you close the temple, and so many other things which people do depending on their religion and caste system. And I feel this whole thing makes the funeral time very stressful, and I don't know, it's not a very fulfilling experience, wherein I don't think so people spend time thinking about their loved ones in a very positive way. In fact, with all these customs and tradition, it becomes a really stressful and painful time. Like, I remember someone who shared their story that when they lost their father, they came home and they were like, no crying and all. Yes, I mean, there was some crying, but what they did was, because the father loved whiskey, they opened his favorite bottle of whiskey, and each of the friends and they came together, they shared a toast, and they shared wonderful stories of that man, how they knew him and what kind of a person he was, and the entire night was spent remembering all those good times. And I feel that is how funeral should be. I mean, the person who is dead would want he or she to be remembered like that. They don't want you to be crying and beating yourself up and literally banging your head against all these customs that don't even make sense. So that's the reason, in abroad, this is a thing that people are actually writing their entire funeral, because that's how they want them to be remembered. And I feel, when I'm going to die, I'm going to exactly, mention how I want my funeral to be. I want people to be happy to remember me and to share anecdotes and stories, and if I touch their life, to talk about that. So yeah, this is what the funeral chapter talks about. The next chapter is about the grief. It says that, so the author has included stories of real people, how they have lost someone in their life, whether it was their father, children, newborn babies, partners, their pets. So what all lessons or learnings they have picked up during those experiences, the author has shared that, trying to provide you some I wouldn't say a rule book, but some pointers, that says like, it's okay, things will get better, and it's okay to ask for help, or it's okay to, feel that sadness and grief. You have lost someone, so it's okay to go through all that. And when you read all these real life stories of people, you understand that, the grief always stays. Yes, over the time you make new relationships in life, you have new people coming, and the grief kind of, hides behind, and then one point of life after a year or once in a month or something, it kind of resurfaces back. And that's okay, because everyone goes through the same. So that chapter is really nice, and it's it leaves you with a message that it's going to be fine, you will be happy again. So yeah, just embrace your grief and feel it completely. Now, towards the end, which is again a very interesting chapter, it talks about the unsaid things. Again, the author has included so many messages that people wanted to actually say to the person who was dying, but they couldn't for various reasons. So it goes by the hashtag unsaid words, and there's so many notes that people have left for their families, and it all the more makes you feel that you should live a life without regret. So the author says, take that flight if you want to your dream holiday, and ask that girl out, or eat your favorite food and all. It's important that you live your life without regret, because and that's the reason, again coming to the first point, that that's the reason it's important that we embrace death, we talk about it, because that's all, that's the only thing that will make us live a more fulfilling life, which is so important. So yeah, this is what majorly the book is all about. These are some of the topics that the book touches. I think it is a beautiful book. It's written with a lot of sensitivity, and the stories are, yes, the stories are emotional, but they are uplifting at the same time. I think all the people read this book in the world, it would just make the world a better place, because then it would teach people to be more kind and compassionate, and just embrace life fully. That is what this book does. In fact, because it's recently written, there are also experiences of COVID-19 and pandemic, how it was when people lost their loved ones during the pandemic, and how awful it was when they couldn't be there in their last days. But the author has discussed that during the pandemic also some people managed to make those last days, or this funeral day, memorable. Like there's one example where they lost a member of the family, and obviously they couldn't get together because of the COVID-19 norms. So they hosted this virtual toasting session where everyone, the family members and friends, came together, and they had this virtual toast wherein they spoke about the person and what how they knew the person and everything, which I think was so beautiful. So the author says that you can actually make your last days a lot more meaningful and memorable. So yeah, the COVID-19 thing is also discussed in this. I would say that that this book has a lot of layers of learning that you could pick up. So this is not a book that you would read in one go, depending on that's what I realized, depending on what situation you are in life, you can pick this book and see how it's helping you, because definitely there are a lot of learnings that are going to help you in different stages of life. So I'm really going to recommend this book to each one of you. There is just this short poem that I would quickly write to read. Just a quote before that. If we embrace our mortality as all living beings must, we can begin to end our lives on our terms with grace and dignity. The poem goes like this. Death makes a crown of love. Death makes a crown of love, a mantle to take across the threshold, as a sign of accomplished living. You are loved, you have loved, and you have lived. And that's important, to remember this, that you are loved, you have loved, and you have lived. So yeah, that's all on this very interesting and I would say a very uplifting book. Definitely recommend. I'm gonna see you guys next week with another interesting title. Till then, take care. Bye bye.